This is a Gracelets audio presentation from Southern California professional Christian counselor Bill Faris. You can learn more about Bill and his counseling, speaking, and writing ministry at billfaris.com or by visiting him on Facebook at Bill Faris MPC. And now here's today's Gracelets audio message.
Hi, this is Bill Faris with another Gracelets audio presentation for you today. And I want to talk to you about a topic that I call simply the best thing I ever did for my sons. Full disclosure, I have 3 sons and 1 daughter. And so some of this applies to my daughter, but a lot of this applies really to my relationship with my 3 sons. So here as we're in the Father's Day mode here in 2016 on recording this right up against Father's Day weekend, I was kind of thinking about my own father relationship. I have now the first next generation of fathers in our family. My oldest son, Chris, is now a father. And in fact, he's the father of triplet girls, and so he and Colleen, my daughter-in-law, not my stepdaughter, my daughter-in-law, are the parents of triplet girls, and so they've made my wife and I the grandparents of triplet granddaughters, which we're pretty excited about. They're about a year old now. But the point I'm trying to make here is that fatherhood is spreading in the Faris family, and I'm happy about that. And I'm hoping now that as my own sons become fathers in the days ahead, God willing, that there will be some value that they will take from my fathering of them forward into their own fathering of the next generations that they will have the opportunity, like I say, God willing, to bring into this world and raise as they feel called and prepared to do that. I have 2 married sons now. Chris, the one I just mentioned, who's the father of the triplets, and another married son, Andrew, who he and his wife have not yet become parents. And then I have a 3rd son who is in his early 20s and is not yet engaged or married. And then my daughter, who is in college and is also, of course, unmarried at this time. But that's kind of the profile of the Faris clan, along with my wife, Robin. Robin has been an excellent mother to our sons and our daughter, and so I will only comment from the father's perspective on fathering sons in this talk. But I would like to take the liberty to speak kind of from my father's heart to this issue of raising sons and investing in the father-son relationship. And I would like to talk about it really in some of the things I feel some of the things I feel like I did my best fathering work. Some of the inspirations I was given and acted upon to do some good fathering. And that's the topic here today. So I think of that wonderful passage, in the book of Malachi that prophesies that there is a day when the hearts of the fathers will be turned to the children and the hearts of the children to the fathers. We need to elevate and appreciate the role of fathers and the role that fathers play in the lives of their children. I think after, let's call it 30 or 40 years of a lot of cultural denigration of fathers and treating fathers as either doofuses or disposable, there's beginning now to it's beginning to dawn on our broader culture again, maybe afresh, that fathers really do matter, and they matter hugely, and not just as providers or not just as sort of baseline personalities in the household, taking some kind of a backseat to the really important parent, the mother. No, really understanding that fathers have a tremendous, important contribution to make. And let's be honest, I shouldn't say let's be honest, they have a contribution to make to their sons and their daughters. But I want to focus on the contribution they can make to their sons. So I want to take you with me back to a conversation that I was a part of some years ago now. I'm going to say it's about 15 or maybe more years ago now, where I was in a room with 100 men, give or take, and they were of a variety of ages, but in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, in that vicinity. No teenagers and no truly senior, older seniors. And the speaker that was speaking to this collection of men that day on men's issues in a church setting asked a really interesting question. He said, how many of you men out there ever had a father, a stepfather, a grandfather, an uncle? I mean, he was making this as broad as he could, a special family friend. I mean, how many of you ever had a male authority figure ahead of you in life in some important way ever take you aside in an intentional way with some intentionality to it, in essence, sit you down and say to you, young man, this is what it means to be a man. This is what it takes to be a man. This is what a good man is, what a good man does. This is what you need to know about money, about sex, about faith, about living life, about work, about ethics, just any kind of deliberate preparation process, even a brief one that prepared you for manhood, prepared you to know when you were a man, and prepared you to know how to be a good and perhaps even a godly man. Anybody that ever intentionally took you aside and poured out that kind of investment into you. Well, I don't know how many of those 100 people you think said, yes, this has happened to me, even in the broadest possible form as offered by that speaker. But I'll tell you, the answer was about 10 guys out of 100. 10 out of 100. That means 90% of the men in that room had never had that opportunity or that experience. And man, when I saw that, because by the way, I was one of the 90, not one of the 10. My own father had not ever really done that, nor had any other father figure in my life ever taken me aside in that way, in any kind of a deliberate investment in my life. And so I was, among the large crowd of those who had not had that experience or opportunity, but the 10 guys or so that did, they really stood out. And the speaker said, I go all over the country and I speak in all kinds of situations, all kinds of churches across the land, etc. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. It's the same everywhere. About 10% of the men that I speak to have ever had that opportunity. And man, my ears perked up because I was a father by this time. My sons were still pretty young, but I was definitely, he had my attention. And I had this thought. I thought, man, if I could give something like that to my own sons, they would be ahead of 90% of their peers. Now, I don't mean to say that in a way emphasizing the competitive nature of that statement. I wasn't trying to say they'll be better than other people in some kind of a competitive notion. I'm just saying that I saw an opportunity to really give my sons a very special, rare, and precious, usable, valuable gift. And I thought, I want to do that. I really want to do that. And so I started to kind of get my wheels turning on what that might look like. And then some years later, a couple years later, I came across a book and an opportunity to hear the speaker, the author of the book called Between Father and Son by James Wilder. And I remember reading that book and listening to James Wilder speak that weekend. And he talked about a father-son weekend that he had set up for his children. He spoke about it and he wrote about it in the book. And there were a couple features that I really latched on to of this experience that he had set up and put together for his own sons. And I thought, well, I can do this. I could kind of adapt this to the Faris family here a little bit in my own relationship with my sons. And I could see this happening. So there was a couple features, and I want to share them with you because I think that if you can get inspired by this, I'm not saying you have to just copy this, although you're certainly welcome to. But I kind of assembled from some influence from Wilder, from influence from this other speaker I mentioned, influence from James Dobson and so forth. I began to assemble a simple little plan that I would like to share with you how to invest in the mentoring of your sons' preparing them for manhood, for their next stages of life as a father. So here's how it goes. Age 13 is a gateway, isn't it? Age 13 is the gateway into adolescence, isn't it? We have our sons coming up into their 13th year. They're starting to shift from, really a childhood identity into that of a young man, an adolescent, a teenager. Now, this implies a lot of changes in how they think. Their brain actually changes. Their thinking changes. Their spiritual capacities change. Their relationships change. They're physiologically going through tremendous changes, and so on. And so I thought, okay, that's a good time to get some time with my sons one-on-one and talk to them about the next kind of passage ahead, the next stretch of the road through their teenage years. I want to get them prepared for adolescence and all that will go with their teenage years. At least start the conversation in an intentional way. So I went ahead and planned a overnight getaway that would take place around their 13th birthday as each of the sons came up through that stretch of the road. And beginning with my oldest son, Chris, we planned a getaway that I would spend some time going out of town with them, and we would go and do something really fun. But the night before our fun day together, we would have a father and son one-on-one talk about some things. And so I decided I would take my son away. I would also pray about a special gift to give him that would mark the occasion that he would hopefully never forget. And so I prayerfully put together a gift for my oldest son, Chris. It was very unique. I found this thing that they used to have called cassette tapes back in the day. It was a cassette tape recording of the prayer that the pastor who we took our firstborn son. I was on the staff of a church at the time, and our senior pastor, my wife and I stood with him as he prayed a prayer of dedication over my infant son, dedicating him to the Lord, and of course, our agreeing with him in that prayer of dedication. And it was recorded, so I had it transcribed, framed, and wrapped up to present to my son on his 13th birthday or thereabouts and say, here's the prayer that was prayed over your life when you were just a little baby, dedicating you to the Lord. Here's the words that were yours. Here was the vision that was proclaimed over your life as an infant child, and now you're a young man coming up into your adolescence. I want to give this gift to you so you can kind of keep this close to your heart as you continue to develop. And so that was the gift I prepared for him. And I had prayed about that, and that's what came to me, and it worked out really well. So we went away. We had a talk together that night about things like sex, the physical changes, the mental and emotional changes, the spiritual changes. Basically said, adolescence is coming. It's a time of real transformation. Here's what's going to happen in your body and how to kind of be ready for that. And with that, here's what's going to happen in your mental state, your mind, your emotions, your relationships are going to change. Here's where those are your relationship with your parents is going to change, with me and your mom, your relationship with your sibling, so forth and so on. And so we just kind of walked through these key areas of life: spiritual, physiological, mental, emotional, psychological, relational, just touched on a number of them. Money, here's some principles from scripture about money, about different things. And we just kind of walked through. Now, this wasn't designed to kind of give the whole encyclopedia of preparing for adolescence downloaded in one gulp. But this was an opportunity to kind of begin these conversations that we could always pick up on later, but get some things laid down and kind of start the relationship, kind of give definition to my fathering relationship to my son as, hey, I'm here for you. I'm interested in where you're at in life, and I'm ready to kind of invest what I can share with you to be of useful value in that relationship. And so we did that. We spent that time, and we had a time together that evening going over some of those things. I wrote out some notes. I gave him some things to keep And then also the next day we went ahead and had just a play day together. We just enjoyed a day of, I think it was in Disneyland, if I remember right, with him. The next day we just enjoyed a day out, an outing together. So that was our opportunity here in that first outing to set the trend. Well, then I did this also with my second son, Andrew, and with my third son, Matthew, when they each became about 13 years old. We did the similar thing. I prayed about a gift to give each of them and so forth, and we had the same kind of experience, some different features, but similar. Then I thought, okay, well, now 18 is when you start into that tunnel that leads out into young adulthood. You know, you're breaking out of high school, going into the college years or the young adult years that way. And, here comes a whole nother big season of change as a man. So I thought, well, we'll do another one of these getaways at 18, and we'll just go over the same kind of ground, but with an update. So we talked again about here's how your body's going to change. Here's how your strength is going to change. Here's how your mind and your wisdom is going to change. Here's how your relationships are going to change. Here's how your spiritual walk is going to, progress, and so forth and so on. And we just kind of laid out that ground, kind of mapped the ground ahead a little bit. Again, played together, enjoyed some time together, father and son, and kind of made an updated new investment in the next season of life that would be dawning in the not too distant future. Again, making it possible for us to pick up any of those topics as we go forward as well. So there we have it. And then the third time in their life, I thought, well, I want to make this special investment, was in their preparation for marriage. And I thought, well, we'll do this one more time. We'll have this father-son powwow sometime leading up to when they're going to be married and say their wedding vows. So with my oldest son, the first to get married, we went away together down to Del Mar, actually, beautiful coastline near San Diego, and spent an evening in the hotel down there overnight, and just talked about, okay, here's what's coming up with marriage. Here's some of the things that I know about marriage, and the Bible teaches us about marriage, and some things. And we talked back and forth about his relationships with girls over the years, and his relationship with his wife to be, and we just had a meeting of the hearts, meeting of the minds on these issues of marriage, and didn't talk so much about fathering, but more about the marital relationship itself, and then just enjoyed a beautiful time together doing that. Now, what was interesting was that he was the first to get married, and then several years later, the next brother in line, Andrew, he gets engaged to be married. And I said to Andrew, okay, I took Chris away and we did an overnight together, before he got married. And now, do you want me to do that with you, just you and I? I want to offer you that opportunity for just you and I to go away and have the same kind of talk we had at 13 and 18, but really about marriage now. Or do you want Chris to join us and have the three of us take this time? And now Chris had been married a couple of years by this time, and would that be of value to you, Andrew? And Andrew said, yeah, I would really like it if Chris could join us. So we did. The three of us went away, and we spent a night together and talked all things marriage and marital. And now he had not only my old man perspective, but he had his older brother's perspective a little bit to throw into the mix. And it was really cool. It was awesome to build that memory together. And I think it's something that we all three treasure to this day. Well, then came my son, Matthew. He's a few years behind his older brothers by some years, actually. And so Matthew was entering into his 18-year-old getaway time, and I said to Matthew, "Okay, look at this can be just you and me, like I did with your brothers, or if you want, do you want to invite your brothers to come, your older brothers to come on your 18-year-old getaway and join me, and we'll all go away together?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd like my brothers to come along." So now 4 of us went away. And we had a really fun, awesome night together overnight and on around Matthew's 18th birthday. And a really cool participation of my wife on that particular one was the gift that I gave Matthew on his 18th birthday overnighter was a beautiful book that my wife prepared. We secretly asked for advice, blessing, any kinds of, endowment of wisdom or a blessing from various friends and family members that knew Matthew, that know Matthew, and wanted to just speak some words over his life. We collected those secretly and then printed them out. My wife took some photographs and she printed out the words and put them together into a beautiful kind of a presentation book. And we were able to give him that treasure chest of great knowledge and wisdom and blessing that, had came through all of these voices in his life that he respected. And now he's still got that treasure in his possession. And so the older brothers and their dad and him went away for his 18th, and we did that time together and marked it with some other things that I won't go into that are very special Faris features of our Faris men's time together. So I say all this to say, and I could say a lot more about it actually, but I just want to put this in front of you, my listeners, to inspire you. Fathers, make that investment. Even if it wasn't made in you, figure out how to make it in your sons. Yeah, and your daughter too. I did some things with my daughter that were special to the two of us to mark some of her points of maturity, and her mother did as well. But I really am focusing here today on the father-son relationship and saying, fathers, don't be afraid. If you do anything, you'll do more than most, and your sons will have an advantage that many of their peers won't have. But you don't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be expensive or take tons and tons of time, but do mark the passages of their life with an investment from their dad that says, I see you, I believe in you, I love you, I want to invest in you, and God has given me some things that I think will make a difference for you, my son. And I want to pour them into your life and get that conversation started so we can continue it in the days to come. And that would be my call to you, fathers, and my prayer for inspiration for all of you fathers as I close out this Gracelets audio presentation. Thanks for listening, and do listen to other Gracelets audio and Shot of Grace presentations that are posted for you to enjoy. Thanks again.
This has been a Gracelets audio presentation from Bill Faris, MPC. For more brief and full-length audio messages from Bill, visit his page at Spreaker.com. And don't forget to share your comments with Bill by writing him at billfaris@billfaris.com. Thanks for listening.